right? I had not used Clojure until I would say 2 weeks ago when I started prepping for this. I've heard of it through Benjamin for, I would say, maybe the last maybe 10 years that we've known each other. I think you've talked about Clojure on and off and have recommended I learn about it till, until today. So basically, what is Clojure good for, right? It's good for data processing, development, distributed systems, and you can run it on cloud environment. And apparently, a lot of company uses it in places like finance, e-commerce, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Ben, you said that even the Play Store, Apple Play Store, is written Clojure or something similar to Clojure. Did I make that up?
No, you're right. Apple uses it in some of their services. Actually, I'll find the links and share it in the chat.
Okay. All right. So yeah, so basically, that's what Clojure is. And kind of let me step back a little bit and kind of give you the agenda, right? And I apologize, I failed to start with that. The reason why I'm starting with Clojure, even though the title of the talk is XDDB SQL database, is because this database is actually written in Clojure, and one of the ways to actually access or use the database is to use Clojure, right? APIs. It has other APIs like Python and Java, Node, but I picked Clojure one because I also wanted to learn Clojure, and because it also fits right well with the actual database itself. So we're gonna go through Clojure, quick intro on Clojure, then we're gonna get into the actual database, XDDB, and then that would be basically the talk, and then do a demo at the end. So that's kind of like how the talk is gonna go. So there are many ways to get started with Clojure. One of them is to use the Lenigan package manager. So essentially, you have to download that in your computer and then use the CLI to create a project, and then start a repo to get started. I did not. So the way I did this talk or this presentation, I actually used VS Code and a library called Calva to do this, because being new to Clojure myself, I quickly ran into what do I call it? Not an issue, but like a blocker, where the environment that I was trying to use to actually code, I couldn't get that started. I didn't get it. I couldn't figure out how to actually make it work. So I went to an IDE that I was more comfortable with, which Visual Studio Code, and that helped me kind of get a gist of like, oh, okay, so this is how it works. This is how it works. But usually, folks use Lenigan and just your typical terminal to get started. So basic syntax, and I have a actual demo later that I'm going to show you, but basic syntax is kind of like how you, a lot of like the expressions have parentheses around them. And so for a list like this, this is how you create a list, this is how you create a vector, a map, and then you see how you have those parentheses, like this is how you define a function, right? For example, this function says, okay, you have this keyword here, the name of the function, the parameters, and then what the function does, pretty much. And then to call that function is, I'll show you how to do that in the demo. So for this, again, as mentioned, for this use case, right, XDDB uses Clojure, and a lot of the ways people actually access XDDB is to use the Clojure API. Even the creators themselves, when I looked at a lot of their demos, they've used the Clojure APIs to showcase their demo. So I have an example here that you can follow if you want to use the Lenigan way, but let me show you how I did it. So again, to introduce something else that is new, for those who maybe have not used Emac before, I started using Emac, I would say, in the last 2.5 years on and off. And I wanted to use Emac to, oops, sorry. Oh, shoot. I wanted to use Emac to basically learn. Oh, see, that's the problem now. 1 second, I need to. So, sorry, it's that's the thing. Learning something new Bear with me. I'm gonna restart my emac and then show it. 1 second. I think it froze. I was working on it this morning and then it froze. So I'm gonna restart it. Yeah, it's frozen. 1 sec.
You can also use the online playground if it helps. I'll put the link in the chat.
Okay, yeah, send it to me. Then that might be better. That's what you call demo, live demos. Things stop working the second you want to use them. But yeah, so basically, I wanted to kind of run a few commands with him and to showcase the usage of closure. Are you sending the chat? Okay, let me take a look.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so basically, that's the online version of what I was trying to do. And as I mentioned, right, in order to basically get started with closure, you have to have what you call a REPL, and then the REPL is basically what evaluates your code, your lines of code, right? So this actually is the REPL that's going, and so let's say I want to do like adding two numbers. So I would do like the parentheses that I mentioned, and then do like the sum, and then say 5 and 6, for example. And I think to run this, I have to do maybe enter. Yep. So that's how it basically, one way to do it. Now, if for example, I want to create a, like a variable and then use that variable, right? So I can do something like this. And then like this, do that. And then if I want to print, so print, and then I can now call, let's see. So it worked. So as mentioned, right, you can see everything has like that parentheses around it. That's correct, right, Ben? Like I didn't get that far to see anything otherwise, but I've noticed that any expressions that any piece of code, basically any lines, has those like the parentheses around.
Yeah, pretty much in closure and all of the Lisp, the verb comes first, right? So the verb will be like pretty much the action you want it to take. So for example, the first example you typed, this is for like the addition. And then all of the parameters come after. So for example, for the addition in that case, if you had a whole bunch of numbers to add, you wouldn't have to repeat the plus sign, just like in the C-like languages. Like in the second one, the verb is def, like DEF, for the finding something. And then the third one, again, the verb is to print.
Yes.
So it's verb first.
Yep. Okay. So you could, let's say you want to create like a what you call, like a map, for example, right? So you define a person, for example, and you do something like this. This is the part that maybe I'm still learning, is the two dots right here that I've yet to figure out what it means yet. But I know that in order to create those variable names, especially in the context of like maps like this, it's used quite a bit. So this is, then you do, for example, age, and then I give myself a 10-year-old, then I close it, and then I close the bracket. So that defines the person. And then in order to access like some of the details, so you can use the get, and then the get keyword, and then the actual person, and then you can say, okay, what do I want of that person, right? So here I would say perhaps the name, and see. So that's how it shows. So you're getting from the person the key, the name. The verb comes first, and what you're trying to do. And I think so. Lastly, I wanted to showcase a few other keywords that I found pretty interesting. So if we put a vector, and then we call that vector, let's say a vector like this, and then you put like some numbers, random numbers. So I defined it with the keyword first. That will give me the first vector. And if I use same thing like last, it will give me the last vector. So interesting, like keywords like this, right? It reminds me a little bit of Python, to be honest, but yeah. So any questions? I mean, any questions that I can answer, let me put it this way. I'm sure, like, if you want to learn, there's a lot of resources out there that you can access. There's a lot of books, and obviously you can use some of the AI tools out there to help you create like a learning plan. Yeah, I think that was really interesting. I thought that was really interesting. I wanted to kind of like bring it up and maybe recommend learning this as one of your, if you're into programming, like a tool, another tool in your tool belt. I don't know, Ben, if you want to share your experience about Clojure and like how, when you started using it and, any benefits perhaps.
Yeah, sure. I mean, first I want to say that Clojure is a bit of a curse, because if you really get into it, you're gonna get frustrated with the other languages that you use at work. That's a guarantee. So the way I went into Clojure is that many years ago, I think it was in 2009, I had a company sponsored conference to attend, and at the time I was really deep into Spring and backend development, and also a bunch of single page applications for the front end. Right. So my main goal was to go attend the conference and learn about some, I don't know, some advanced Java techniques. I think at the time, what's the name? HTFS and Hadoop was all the rage. So that was my main goal, like see how to integrate this with the Java backend. And then when I arrived at the conference and then was looking at the details of what was being presented, I saw Clojure. They mentioned that it was a Lisp and then it runs on the JVM. And I remember that I had heard about Lisp before, because what I had learned before was that Lisp used to be one of the languages heavily employed for AI, right? So out of curiosity, I attended the presentation on Clojure. I think it was presented by Stuart Holloway, like one of the main in front people in the Clojure ecosystem. And then to my big surprise, it was trivially simple to integrate Clojure into an existing Java code base, right? And it was basically an extra library that you could sneak into your existing code base, and then it will just work, right? And then, after playing with it some more, like the following weeks, I noticed that a lot of the ceremony that we'll usually find in Java code bases were just not needed. All of those static, private, blah, 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 void, and all of those keywords that are noisy in the code base, they were just not needed, but yet I was able to do the things I was used to doing in terms of building stuff. So, and then I've never left it since then. I always have some sort of Clojure projects that are going on the side. So, even, for example, the current website that I'm still working on, it's not finished, but the current website for the Ubuntu TechHive is full Clojure, an API backend written in Clojure for the JVM, and also some of the JavaScript is written in Clojure as well, but Clojure script. And I'll stop here. I don't want to take too much time.
All right.
Yeah.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So yeah, so basically that's kind of like I wanted to kind of do a quick intro to Clojure because that's going to help with the later topic with XDDD, right? And my plan is to really keep pushing and learning Clojure. And so far I haven't. I think for me the hardest part was to get it started, like in my local machine and And I think that was the hard, well, that was my challenge. And let me put it this way. I could have asked Ben for help, but I wanted to figure it out myself. So that's why. Anyways, so
yeah, maybe let me make an additional comment here. The one benefits that I see for learning Clojure right away is that if anyone has to spend time learning about a new programming technique, it's, in my opinion, it's better to do something quite foreign, quite different than what you used to. Because otherwise, let's say you know Java, and then you hear tomorrow that C# is in the news, it makes all the buzz and stuff. It's not really different. It's pretty much Java, but written in a funny way for the Microsoft stack, right? You know, same thing if you do any scripting, JavaScript, and then you switch to, I don't know, Lua and stuff, it's not very different. You know, so it means that your way of approaching problems is remains the same with some minor differences. Whereas tackling a language that looks significantly different than what you are used to, it really does expand your mind, and it brings you a completely new perspective on programming.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let me go back here. So XTDB. So instead of showing this, let me go to the website actually. So this is the website for XTDB. This is the tutorial website. Let me go to the actual regular website. So the key for them for this tool is that Immutable SQL database. So immutable meaning the data that is inserted, you can always find a way to get that data back, right? So whether you make changes to it, whether you delete it, whether you anything really, there is always a way to kind of like recover that data. And that philosophy is done right off the bat, because regular, I would say, previous SQL databases or databases, you could technically get some of the data back, but you have to think about it from the get-go, right? You'll have to, let's say, have copies of it, like doing like nightly backups and duplicates, anything, right, to really say someone drop a table that you're able to go get that back, right? Whereas XTDB, which actually the old name is apparently Crux, CRUX, but they changed the name and then now it's called XTDB. So that's kind of like the main site for it. If you're looking for some of the documentation, it's kind of like right here. You can run some of these straight off the website itself, and it has a few drivers to access the XTDB node. So one of them obviously is Python. You can even use Kotlin for FS and Clojure. So I went with the Clojure version because like I mentioned, I wanted to learn Clojure. So you can also learn some of the syntax straight up here. It has references as well. So their website, I mean, personally, like if I have to kind of give a feedback on the website, it has information. It definitely has some information and it can be very helpful. The one thing that I maybe struggle with sometimes is I felt that sometimes they would skip steps, especially in the configuration side of things, right? Let's say to even get started, right? And I understand because it's a company that haven't been around that long, so they're getting started. But that I would say that's one of my only feedback is that I've had challenges sometimes setting things up, if that makes sense. However, with this talk, I'll show you what I did to kind of get started. But yeah, it has the Clojure API, which is kind of like what I used, and I got a node started and started running it. So let me go back to here. So this is again one of another place for more documentation. So XTDB also uses storage, especially for a lot of the checkpointing. So you can use S3, you can use all these storage locations to do checkpointing. And for this talk, I did not get to that far, but it has the documentation on how to do that. Perhaps a part 2 of this talk could do it. But for the purpose of this, the use case for the storage is definitely to do checkpointing for your data. Yeah, and clients, again, as I mentioned, you have Clojure as a client, Java, and HTTP. So you can actually use HTTP to access the node, the running node, and send it command to run to execute your transaction. XCDB calls it transactions. So like if you want to create a document / a data or delete, you could use actually HTTP to send it to the XCDB node that's running, and then that will execute it for you. The demo, I'll showcase all that in the demo. One of the main concepts really that XCDB really showcase is the concept of bitemporality. So the way I understand bitemporality is how you can have like a certain piece of data have like different, like the way I understand validity, right? So let's say you have someone record, right? And let's say you insert that record into the database, right? So when you insert that record into the database, that is called the transaction time, right? That's when you inserted that data into the database, okay? Then there would be a time where perhaps that data is deleted or that data is changed or whatever, right? Then when you do that, you could essentially introduce another piece of record into that data called like a valid, right? So basically that data piece now has two what's the word I'm looking for? It has two aspects or two things associated with it, right? One is when that data was inserted and how long that data is valid for. Because depending on that, when you query the database, you may or may not get the record back, right? So let's say you delete that data, and I'll show that in the demo. Let's say you delete that data, and then you query the table later, you may not find that data anymore because obviously it's deleted, right? However, once you use the transaction time, you may actually be able to find that data, right? So that's where the database being immutable actually comes in. And I would recommend really reading about that. That's one of the main kind of like feature about XDB is the fact that it can keep history of the data and using these variables. So then for things like audit, let's say you are a company that needs to keep audit for a certain time. However, you need to kind of like clean your data, clean databases, right? Then even if you delete some of that information, you should be able to still recover it using let's say transaction time, for example. So let me go back to here. Question? Any question?
Yeah, maybe I can ask a question. So does it mean that we can think of XDB as a database that records facts? Like, for example, like an event happens yesterday, right? And we put it into like we insert it as a row into a table. And for some reason, we need to make an edit. Okay, let me rephrase. Something happens to a vehicle yesterday, and then we need to make to record a different fact about that vehicle yesterday. Recording a new fact about the vehicle doesn't mean that yesterday's fact about the vehicle is no longer existed or no longer happened. It did happen.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, that is exactly right. Because you can go back and basically, for the lack of a better word, change the past, right? So yes, the one of the demos actually talks about that. So here, so updating the past, and that's actually one of my demos, right? So for example, say you introduce like a particular record, but then you want to go back, in the past and then change that, right? Adding historical data, you are able to actually do that. Yes. Yep. And they still keep history about everything. Yes. So we'll get to that in the demo. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The other, it's schema-less, so you don't necessarily have to create a schema to get started. You can apparently do the graph query, as I did not I didn't do the graph query part. It also has a SQL driver you can use. So for example, that I started with that part, but then I ran into, for some reason I couldn't get started. I couldn't get it to work. So right here, you are able to use PSQL to query the database. And I mean, by PSQL, I'm really regular SQL, right? And but I tried to get this one to start to work, but for some reason I think my configuration was not correct. So I went a different route. However, this is the documentation that they talk about, where you can install XTDB via Docker with this command right here, and then attach a volume for where, because the thing is, like when you get the Docker image and then you don't attach a volume, as soon as you restart the node again, then your data is wiped out. But if you want to keep the data, you can attach a volume, and basically the server is going to be available at this local host right here, and then you can connect with PSQL and start running queries. So that's the part that I tried to do, and for some reason I think maybe my machine had some misconfiguration or whatever, but I couldn't get that going. But so basically that's one way to access it. So going back to this, as again I mentioned, it's used in a lot of like financial services, especially for audit, healthcare, again for audit, regulatory compliance, supply chain, and things like that. Skip these because most databases have those, but so these are the I'll show that to you in the talk. But essentially, the way I got started with this is that I use VS Code and then Calva. So Calva is a library where you can do interactive programming with Clojure. So similar to what I showed you in the in this one right here. So you can think of it as like Calva providing that feature in VS Code. So you can follow, for those who have VS Code, you can follow, first you need to download the plugin and then follow the instructions to install. I'll show it to you now in a second. And then you're able to kind of like get a Clojure REPL going and then start to do the evaluate your code. It's fairly, this library is fairly used, fairly popular, and yeah. So now let me go here first. So the library is called Calva. So I downloaded that. So this one. So Calva Clojure and Clojure script. So I downloaded that via VS Code, and then it has a command where you can create a new project. So I started to create a mini Clojure project because I didn't really need a whole lot. So what that did, it created this, created a small project here, mini. You'll have to provide it like a location of where you want that project to be created, and then it'll create it for you. And in Clojure, you have a let me restart the repo. In Clojure, you have like the way you want to add your dependencies. You have, it's a file called deps.edn. So this is where you kind of put your dependencies. Okay. So for this XTDB, so you can see here first I need Clojure, and then inversion, and then right here you can start to see about the XTDB core, which is the main entry point that creates that node for you. I was experimenting with the JDBC and the SQL, but we're not gonna get that. Those are a code that I'm not using really. But the main one is going to be this one, XTDB core. So when you restart, so when you have you update the depths.edn file with whatever dependency you need, right? I guess then you need to have the REPL started, right? So typically it will show up here at the bottom, as you can see here, REPL. And then if you click on it, you click on that, and then because mine was started, you can kill it or you can restart. So if you just restart it, then if you can see at the bottom, it's gonna create the node, and then the REPL, and then that REPL would be waiting for you to send it commands or send it code for it to evaluate and give you a response. I don't know if that makes sense. Any questions?
Yeah, I think you have a question in the chat.
Oh, sorry, I'm not looking there. Let me take a look. Temporary database and programming. I'm not sure I understand. What are the benefits of a temporary database and programmation?
I think maybe
Nyangwa, can you expand your question?
Yeah, Nyangwa, you can take the mic. You can unmute and ask.
Nyangwa. So let me try to understand the question. So what are the benefits of a temporary database? Temporary database. I guess the only thing that I can think of is, what would actually be a temporary database?
Maybe referring to temporal, what you were explaining earlier, like temporal database. Maybe.
Like what?
When you started explaining about XTDB, and you mentioned bitemporal.
Yeah, bitemporal, sure. Okay, so yeah, the benefits, one of the first benefits that I can think of is audit, right? You are able to one, have the data, like the first record of the data. So when you inserted like that transaction time that I mentioned, let me actually go back to it. If I can find it. I have so many things open that, here it is. Yeah, so the one thing, the way that I understand and that I can see the advantage of bitemporality is, again, you are able to keep one history of any sort of like updates or manipulation you did to your data, right? So when you insert it the first time, right, well, you have that transaction time, and then you're able to basically assign it, when that data is valid from and to, right? So let's say you insert the price of a product, right? And let's say and then that's actually my demo. You insert the price of a bicycle, let's say it's $300, right? But then you want to update that. Today is $350, okay? But when you query it today, it's gonna show $350. However, let's say for some reason you want to go back and see when has the price changed the first time, or you want to see the history of the price change, right? You need to be able to kind of go back and perhaps use the transaction time to see the history of the data. Whereas in your typical SQL, it's a little bit more involved, right? You have to know, know like maybe like a column that says this price is valid, from this time to this time, and this, and then this price is valid from, it's not valid anymore, or if it's deleted, it's not going to show up anymore in the rows. So temporality for XCDB offers you that right off the bat, like right off the box. You don't have to like design that into your typical SQL database, right? This is available right off the bat here. And again, the main advantage for that is being able to go back and audit your table, right? For audit purposes, right? And also saying, okay, if for compliance reason, you need to know certain information about it, right? So that's all that feature provides you with all that, basically. I think it's gonna make more. It's gonna be a little bit more clear when we start going through the code. So the first one that I want to talk about is this one. So I already got that going, but when you look at this, again, this is a closure file, clg.clg. The repo is running, actually. So actually, I can restart it. So it's gonna be run. Okay, so you can see now it's good. It's good to go, right? So what it did, first of all these imports are good to go. So what this demo is about, let me actually share where I got that demo. This is the link here. So the demo is in the chat. So basically, we're going to insert, the goal of this demo is to show that data is not lost, okay? So in order to do that, first we need to create, we need to start the XTDB node, right? So the XTDB node, again, is the main kind of component of XTDB, right? So that needs to be started. So we'll get that started. So at the bottom here, that should show, oh, 1 second. My thing's not going to work today. There you go. So it's good to go. So it started right here. And one way to know also is you get the kind of like the output, I call it, right here in line almost. So that's kind of how I understand it. So this tells you, okay, this evaluating this line worked. It's good to go. Okay. Then this line here, basically I create a function that would take all the transaction that I need and then submit it to the node that I just started. And then after each submission, this function right here, the sync, what it does, the way I understand the API is that it makes sure that everything obviously is synced, right? Because what I've noticed is that it's synced and indexed. What I've noticed is that I've run into issues where I would send it transactions, but then I would query it and then not get the result that I was expecting. And doing a little bit of research, I was told that I found out that calling that sync is kind of like a best practice. Then I create some timestamps. One other thing that I noticed also is XTDB is really sensitive on the format of the data that you send it. By data, I mean the way the date you send it. So I have some kind of like queries to, not queries, code to transform and format the date to the date that is good for the transactions. All right, here from line 49 to line 60, what I'm doing is that I'm creating a product. Okay, I'm creating a product, and then this is the product ID, this is the product name, and then I'm putting in a price of $1,000. Okay, and then here, this is very important. This is kind of like your insert statement, right? You're inserting it into the database, right? Here, you're putting it, you're sending it to the node for it to insert it. You're putting it in a document. Here, like XCDB, it's a document, right? You're sending in a document, and that document is that product, right? Right here. Now, this is interesting because then I provided with like a valid time. When is this product, like that record, when is it valid from? Okay, and we shall do that. So you see the bottom here, it's good, it's inserted. Now I want to kind of check and see that if it's all in there. So this, again, it queries that node, and then it finds the name and the product and the price, where the product name and the product price. So that's what I'm looking for. Control. So I outputted right here, all the products. Sorry, all the documents / products. So I have it right here. So the bicycle costs $1,000 and the pump costs $2,000. Wow, that's expensive. Now we're gonna try to delete product 2, which is the bicycle pump. So I submit again a transaction right here to the node and send a delete message, product ID 2, and then kind of like a record on when I deleted it. So hit it. So that worked. And then now let's query it to see if now we should have one product left because we deleted one, right? So we are left with how just regular electric bike. But is it actually deleted? So typical database, when you send a delete command, I mean, it's out of the database, right? It is out. Again, unless you have a copy somewhere or whatever. But here, I can go back and this time query it like when the actually before the delete date, like before I actually deleted it. So print it, I mean, look for it by February 24th, which is before I send the delete command. And you can see I'm able to find it, right? So it theoretically, your data is not really lost. But yeah, and we can look at the history of all the what you did with that data at the bottom here. So you can see, for example, for the bicycle pump, you have the first transaction here. You have your bicycle pump, price of 2,000. Go ahead, Afis.
So is that like a feature you turn on and it's on by default, or is that like for data recovery?
It's on by default because that is the goal of this database. It is on by default.
Okay.
It's on by default. However, you have like there's just a few things you have to do. So when you're inserting a product, for example, right? For example, let me go up. You provided like these kind of things, right? Like when you inserted it, right? Like insert date, for example, right? And then when you delete it, right here, you're basically saying, okay, I'm deleting it. And then if we go back at the top and look at the date, now you're telling it basically that the product is not valid after that date anymore. So that when you just query the database without providing any sort of filter, that product is not going to show up. But if you still want to see that product for any reason or see the history, then you can use, if you know, for example, when the delete did happen, you can go back before that and then get it. So though it's available right off the box, and you don't necessarily have to. I guess the feature that they're trying to show, the advantage they're trying to show is that you don't have to necessarily know a whole lot about the database to get this information.
Got it. So it's like it's a soft delete, right? So it's a soft delete. It's not like archiving the data and then you can retrieve it later on.
Right. Yeah. It's a soft. Yeah, you can think of it that way, like as a almost like a soft delete. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Ben.
Yeah, I think it's instead of seeing it as like soft deletes and things like that, those are concepts for regular databases. Whereas in this case, the purpose of the database is to record facts. I think, like you buy some bread 2 days ago, you eat the bread yesterday. Today you have no bread. The bread itself is not deleted. You just recorded facts about it. So if you query for that bread today, obviously there's no results because you ate it yesterday, right? 2 days ago, the bread was fresh out of the bakery. It's kind of like that.
So if you go back, so if you say, hey, tell me the information about as of yesterday, then it'll tell you that the bread was fresh yesterday. And it's funny because as of is actually
record keeping. Got it.
Yeah. If you see here, as of is actually a keyword that they use a lot. See, so like you see here, like now we create 24, we still get 2024 value. But if you provide it as of a certain date, you may or may not see the data, if that makes sense. So this is a good code and SQL to kind of take a look, and it kind of gives you an idea of about like what that database is able to do. So you have.
I think it correlates better with reality. Where in the other case, you can change the past, you can change the future, you can do everything. So
yeah.
So if you try to make sense out of it, you have to address it in code pretty much. You have to invent it yourself.
Yeah. And it ties well with like that bitemporality thing. Like it has two different times. Any other questions? Okay, let me go back to this. So, again, the goal of this was to showcase that data is not lost. Now let's go back to, let's try you want to capture change, right? So you want to track change of a certain article or a certain item, across time, right? And again, this is something that is very common in retail. You want to see how the price of like a particular product has evolved. Someone has a question? Okay. All right. So for those who want to follow, you can use, this is the understanding change one right here. So we'll do the same thing, right? So again, we have some upper functions for the date manipulations. Let me 1 second. I want to do something quickly. I want to close that node, and then, so I'll get the node started again. We have a product, and then I have 3 different dates. So the date of January 1st, 2024, then the day after January 1st, 2024, I guess 3 months, and then 3 months later. All right. So again, going back, we created the product. It's a bicycle costing $340. Then we're gonna insert that into the database. Now it's inserted using T1, just to make sure you can see that. These pop-ups. So T1, and again, as of January 1st, 2024, I inserted that data, that price of $340. Then we'll query it as of the next day. So we should be able to see that data, right? So the data is there, one bicycle one at $340. Then we're gonna update the price. So we're gonna update the price for February 2nd. You can see T2, the price is $360. And then we're gonna submit it. Again, it's the same product, right? The same product. It's not a different product, it's the same product. So we'll update the price. And then now we're gonna query it, just a couple of days later. So if this doesn't bomb, it should give me the new price, 360. You can see it here at the bottom. This is the new price. Okay. Then we'll update the price again at a price of 380. And then we'll test it again, 380. So we updated the price 3 times. And then now you are able to go back and then take a look and see the price changes. Again, I like for a regular database, right? You would have to perhaps have some columns to track those prices, or you have like duplicate about the same product, those kind of things, right? Like fact tables. Here, if we go back and look at the audit of that table, audit query. Oh, sorry, my bad. Auditory, like I want to go back and take a look at the price as of January 15, just after we inserted that first product, and we can see that it is actually $340. If you remember, the first time we inserted it, it was $340, and then we kept changing it, right, going up, going up. So for the same record again, by record I mean row. If you think about it as a typical regular database, for the same row, I am able to get the price of that product by just providing it, like, when was that product, like when was it valid from, right? So as of, let me put it this way, as of January 15, what was the price of that bicycle? So if we go back here, it's that keyword somewhere here. Where is it? See, as of that date, right? What was the price of the bike? And we can go back and take a look at the history by using this entity history. Again, this helps a lot with audit. So if we run I can show you the change. See, so you can see the transactions that happen, but it's still the same product ID, like the same, like on this regular database, you cannot even have 2 primary keys, right? But here with the same product ID, you are able to have basically an audit log or a history of the price change of that product. So we started with 340 as of January 1st. Then we increased the price to 360 as of February 2nd. And then as of March 1st, the price has gotten to 380. That is becoming an expensive bike. But you can see that you can basically track or audit the changes. And that is something that an analyst may want to see. This, maybe the CFO may want to see those kind of information about your data in a concise and in a kind of like clean way, without you having to like go and create views and create other ways to track those changes. This is right off the box available to you. So I didn't get time to get to fix this one. So what I wanted to maybe see, okay, when was the last time the price got over $350? That would be any time after the 340, right? But for some reason I couldn't figure out how to get that done. So sorry about that. But that is something that's a question you may want to know. Like, when was the first time that the price exceeded $350? So but I couldn't get that done to work. So but yeah, so that's the second demo. Any questions on this? Has anybody seen kind of like the advantage of this database? Seeing how it could be helpful in some situations?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead if you have a question.
I don't.
Well, I thought someone wanted to just speak. I would say that personally, the main advantage that I see is that if I have to maintain the infrastructure for this, I will have less stress, because I would be less worried about losing data.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's one advantage that I see.
Yeah, and for those who have gone through migrations, database migrations, one of the biggest stress is that command drop table, because you want to make sure you have a copy of it before you run that copy from or drop table, those kind of things, right? But at least with this, like you said, Ben, there is a way to at least not lose your data unless the whole node is down, right? But yeah, you have that peace of mind. And it has like SQL feature, closure, all that stuff. Any other questions? All right. So we talked about change capture. We talked about updating lossy database. So we can go to the immutable part now. So immutable would be this one right here. So let's go back to the code. Yeah, so basically here, the by temporality, right? When we were talking about valid time versus transaction, valid time versus transaction time. So valid time when the data is considered valid in real world, transaction time when the data was actually recorded in the system, right? So depending on how you want to query the data, it helps to know these are available to you. And you can query the data again based on both, based on both of these values. So it gives you that by temporality feature. You can have the original and the corrected version of the historical data. Same thing again, we have the same bicycle. And then this time the bicycle $300. So we have 3 timelines. So January 1st, 22, 23, 24. I'm gonna evaluate those as well. Now we're gonna get our wait, let me make sure the node is started. The node is started, yes. Now we're gonna insert that product. Now, okay. So the difference now, before now we're gonna update the price. So before it was 300, we're gonna do 320. It sounds similar to the other one, but there's a slight difference, you'll see. Update the second one, 320, 340. And then now we'll query it as of June 1st. So let's see what comes up. So as of June 1st, the bicycle is $320. So it's the first price update, right? Which happened after January 1st, 2023. So which makes sense. So as of half of the year after that, the bicycle is at $320. Then let's say we want to go back. Like, let's say we want to go back and change that price. Okay. So we want to go back and change the price at that T2 again. Okay. And we want to say, oh, you know, someone made a mistake. Maybe we wanted it to be $310 or something, right? Then we submit that. And then now we go back again, we check that same. So now, as of June 1st, 2023, it's $310, okay? But remember, we said, oh, it's immutable, right? We said, you know, this database is not supposed to be able, you're not supposed to be able to change that, right? But it looks like we changed it. So what if we go back way before making all those changes? And then this time we provide transaction time. It's sort of like your typical valid time from. Now you provide transaction time, okay? Remember, we have transaction time when the record were actually inserted, and valid from or valid time when we think or when we say that the data is valid from the valid term. And this should give us, if I'm not mistaken, oh, sorry, I need to actually call the function to do. I'll put it $340. So we changed it to 310, but then we corrected it. But actually, we can go back and see how much it is. It was, I mean. And we can also check with. Actually, hold on. Let me see. What is that? Let me make sure. I may have had. I think this is just the same code duplicated. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so the difference, I mean, as I mentioned, the difference again here is that you went back in the past and then you changed the price. So the price was 300 and I can't remember, maybe like 320. Then you went back, you changed the price. You said 310, sorry, 340. And then you went back, you said 310. But we said that technically speaking, we were not able to change that. We should not be able to change it, right? Then you're able to go back and actually see when it actually, that is still there. So let me actually showcase it here even more. So you have those three prices, 300, 400, 500 as of 1, 22, 23, 24. It's all here. Then you can see the price as of January 1st. So that should give us like that first one, 300 should give us that second one, 400, that third one, 500. And then we go back and then we update the price, 350. And then that made that update happen. Then we can check it's there. Then we, you know, but still we want to say, okay, wait a minute. We said that we're not able to change it, right? So we can still go back and find the original information about that product. You see, so you have that history. You know, pretty much everything is there. Like nothing has changed. Like you can track like 300, 500, 400, 400, 300, 300. So you have these keywords: valid from valid to, system from system to. You know, it's still there for you. So that's the again going back to immutable. You know, you don't necessarily lose data, and it's recording. It keeps the facts, right? You know, it's not an alternative facts. Any questions? Is this kind of like how you were thinking about XDDB? Is this have you had situations where you've lost databases, or you've done anything to your databases that you wish perhaps this was available? Today's a quiet bunch. Go ahead.
I definitely love it. I know I jumped almost at the end of it, but I really love it. I'll probably do some more research on it.
Yep. Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, so that reminds me of a certain healthcare project we worked on. And if I'm not mistaken, like since the data we were dealing with was quite sensitive,
yeah,
we had to implement some history tables.
Yes.
Right. So sometimes you will be done with your feature thinking it's all good, and then you have to remember, like, oh, shoot, I forgot to implement the history table for that.
Yep.
Well, because I guess when it goes to production, some people's role is to actually look at what's happening to customer data over time.
Yep.
If something was inserted, deleted, modified, but yet it's now that I think about it, it still doesn't match the feature set found in XTDB, because for the history table, even if you know what's happening, if the data is deleted, it's gone.
It's gone. Exactly.
Right. So
yeah.
You say for a hospital and you guys were deleting records? I thought the whole point of those kind of places is to never delete record.
Exactly. So yes, that's exactly what Ben was saying. So it was actually an insurance company, and and they may or may not have been in the news in the last couple of months, if you remember. For those who watch the news. So it was an insurance company, right? And the system we were building was the adjudication system. So adjudication, where when you submit the claim, the system will look at the information and then say, yes or no to the claim, right? And as Ben was saying, we were working on that system where you needed to know basically all the things that happen with either the client or the claim, because they need to know previous claims about that client. Maybe if someone deleted something about that client, they needed to know all that, right? But you need to build a history table to keep track of all that, right? Whereas with something like this, it's right off the bat available. Whether you delete it or not by mistake, or intentionally deleted, it's still there to find. And it's just a matter of you knowing how to what to use to find it, basically. So that's what Ben was trying to say.
Got it.
Yeah, and also if you can imagine the pain, I said the history table, but what I actually meant to say is that there's a history table per table, right? And the schema at the time was past 1,500 tables.
Yep.
So imagine building history tables like 1,500 times.
Yep.
You have to make
So
sense.
you guys telling me that this guy pretty much, got blamed for problems that he did not actually create, but the developers created the problem? We're talking about the same insurance company, right?
Yeah. But no, this has nothing to do with whatever was happening with the.
Got it.
Yeah, no. It was just telling you which insurance company we were working for is what I was trying to say.
Well, I mean, all I can say is that, I'm not justifying any crime here, but there were some weird things happening. I think when we worked, we replaced an existing system, legacy, and the logic about to determine whether the old system gave the right results versus the new system was quite shaky. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. That's probably why I left software engineering, because that we were writing Java code, and I was like, no, I'm out. I'm going to data engineering. So
out. You refuse to sell your soul.
No. I was like, what was the framework again that they were using? I forgot the.
Well, I think they invented it. They invented a lot of things.
Yeah, it was intense.
So in summary, right? Could you give like a brief summary of what XTDB, can be used for, what it does? Like let's say a couple of words of sentence, technically describing what it is, what it does.
Yeah, certainly. So XTDB, you can think of it as like, let me go back to here. Right here. This is their definition. Immutable SQL database to simplify app development and data compliance. This is much easier even to understand, like data compliance. Data compliance meaning you don't want to lose data, because unless you're told, for example, after 10 years you can drop it, after 25 years you can drop it, right? But data compliance here, like meaning you're able to go back and find the history of that data, similar to how I showed you right here, right? You can see the changes, all the changes to that record, right? Healthcare record, you can go back and see, when as the database changed, for example, the name of the person from this name to this name, or change the policy or something like that. You're able to find all these records. So XTDB basically is a database that can, right out of the box, give you that feature. That's one of the features. Obviously, it has other features, but that's one of the features that they really sell, is that immutable immutability of the database and not losing data, for example. Yeah. And again, a lot of places that they use it for, you can see like finance, trades, apparently in trades as well. You want to go back and see, you're going to go back and back test your trades, right? So in trade and financial services, they use that. Yeah. So that's kind of like how I understand it, is that basically. So I don't know if that helps you kind of get the idea.
It does. Thank you.
Yeah.
Also, one thing to note is that in addition to everything as he said, XTDB also uses the same wire protocol as Postgres. Right? So if you have, let's say, if you are a Python user, you can use your typical, Postgres SQL driver for Python, and then work against XTDB.
Yep.
Right.
So this one right here, let me increase the size. So, cycle the library, and then you provide, I actually tested that and it works right off. Like I just downloaded this library, and then you provide these parameters, and, this is kind of like the code to like insert data. And then you just have to connect to the node and then execute your command. So you use this to connect to your database or the XCDB node, and then you send the insert trade, and you can query it to take a look. So it's as simple as this. So you can use Python as well to access XTDB. I tried it and it worked. This one works no problem. I just did not want to do Python again because I wanted to learn Clojure, but also I wanted it to be more interactive, right? Where you can go line by line, and you can do it with Python too, but I just wanted to do Clojure.
And then it comes with a free license.
That was
or commercial.
Yes, I think so. It's open source.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's open source. Let me go back here. I don't want to lie.
Yeah, because these people, sometimes you see a good product and then
Yeah,
their pricing, and then you run.
I know, like for sure, like you can get it like right off the right off the bat like this. But I'm sure like the company itself, say you have issues, that's probably how they make money. Is like if you have issues, for example, they can come and help you. But I don't see like any sort about pricing or anything like that here. And from my recollection, it is open source.
Got it.
Yeah, I think maybe you can open the GitHub repo for that.
Okay.
Yeah, hold on.
What about in terms of volume? I mean, storage. Do you think it's going to take more space than, because if it has to keep all this historical data on record?
Good question. So that is the part that is funny, because I knew that question was going to come up. Is like, where do you even like keep the information? And so S3, right? Remember when I was mentioning about S3? I think it was right here. Storage right here. So you have this storage. So S3. So basically, it's as expensive as where you store your S3, right? Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. I did not get that far into like maybe how expensive it is to run. I don't know what kind of optimization they do in the backend there with S3 to make sure that let's say your storage bill is gonna go up. But I do think that their philosophy, having looked at gone through it, their philosophy is definitely to be lean and efficient, right? Hence, yeah.
Yeah, because I will assume that if we have a record that's changing a lot, that means every time it changes, you write something. So
right.
Yeah. So but that's the beauty of these types of databases, right? You're not modifying an existing record.
Right.
You just append new information.
Appending. That's why it will grow very quickly. But if you can store it into S3, I think this is going to cut the cost.
So I don't know if I missed that part, but now that you guys mentioning S3, so it's a NoSQL, right? It's not like just SQL.
Right. I think of it as like almost like a document, because you're sending in like basically documents, but you can create tables and things like that, right? On top of it, but it's schema-less. But you can provide it schema, right? It's schema-less. So somewhere it says schema-less. Yeah, it's semi-structured, schema-free document handling. Yeah, it supports that, but it's also modern SQL. Yeah. So I mean, it has like a lot of features. Yeah. That's what Ben was talking about, PostgreWire compatibility, right here.
And if I'm not mistaken, like databases like XTDB, I don't think those are the first one of this type. So if I remember well, the way it operates let's say in production, like let's say you pick S3 as your storage, right? And then if you notice, the storage is completely separated from the database engine.
Yes.
The storage is pluggable, right? So you will run the database engine closer to your application, and then the storage potentially can be further away, right? And then what happens at runtime is that if you are querying or doing operations in a certain area of your overall data, that data will be cached, closer to the database engine. So that when you make your queries and all that stuff, you're doing it almost locally, versus making a long call to wherever the data is actually stored. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does.
So you shouldn't have to worry about like the load on the database and all that stuff, because it will be closer to the app itself.
Okay. Good.
Right here.
So what about? No, go ahead.
Yeah. No. Sorry, I was gonna say what Ben just said, like separate storage and compute, right? So you can plug whatever other storage that you want, basically. But yeah, go for it. That's just...
No, I kind of answered my own question. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, Azir, I think you had a couple of questions in the chat from Young Goran and Ashil, like questions and comments, I guess.
Let me see. Can we get view with XTDB? Creating a view. I'm going to say, I don't know. However, that the whole purpose of this database is to actually avoid views, if that makes sense, right? Because with this, you don't necessarily have to have views, really, right? One of the use cases of views is to be able to kind of like shield some data from let's say the end user, or get like a subset of the data, things like that. But I did not see anything about views when I was doing when I was researching on this. So I can't say yes or no, if that makes sense. Yeah. Sheila was looking to implement in real time. So I'm reading a question quickly here. Yeah, I mean, I think Ashil, your question. So the question for Ashil is that he's trying to implement a real-time order tracking system for a bakery, and how can he approach or enhance the order tracking and management? Would it be possible to have a complete history of order status changes while ensuring data consistency? Yeah, I think that is possible, because but maybe real time is the word that's throwing me off again with this. But I do think that with this database, you should be able to capture changes or get a complete history of like a particular order, right? Because we were able to showcase the history of a particular product. So you should be able to see the history of the order. Now, if you're saying maybe to track the status of an order as you go, that is maybe more on the application side. But if it's the history of the order, or yeah, you should definitely be able to use this to do it. Now, obviously, one probably will have to sit down and really check the needs, and make sure that if maybe you just need like a regular SQL database, Postgres or something like that. Any other questions? I think I actually had one last quick demo to go through, but do you have any other questions? No, okay. So this one sounds a little bit similar, where we basically go back and let me show you. I'm following this one now, the updating the past, where you can go back and insert historical data basically, and then provide like a valid from to valid to. So let me go back to it. I think you have the link for that. You can follow as well. So we again have this like a product. So I'll start the node, and then we have some timestamps again, 2020 to 24, and then we have a bicycle. We have 3 bicycles, right, with different transactions, different transaction times. So we have a bicycle when it was 250 at this time, 300 at this time, and 350 at this time. Okay, so this I will do this all at once, but theoretically you don't do this all at once, right? That when you first start, you'll have the bicycle at 250, and then maybe a year later you have it at 300, whatever, right? So, but for the purpose of this, I'll just kind of run them all, and then submit them all. And then now, so basically what this query is doing, it's going back to the history and looking at prices. So let's see here. And then now we can take a look at the complete history of that data. Oops, sorry, let me look at here. So that tells you, right? This is again the other issue that I was having, like with the database, with the code, is that this function right here, I was having some issues where it was not actually doing what I wanted to. However, I can show you the history of the changes. So if I move this up, so you can see if you again go back, so basically I'll show you. So you first inserted a product at a certain price, and then you're able to go back in the past and then start inserting into the database the history of that product. Let's say you didn't have that before, right? So you're able to do that. So again, you see 250, 300, 350. But your first insert was, when you first inserted, I believe it was 350, if I'm not mistaken. No, that's the third one, but yeah. So I'm following this one. Let's go back to here. So you have the product. First of all, you have the product here where as of January 1st, 2024, it's $340. And then we should be able to see it. And then if we go back a year before that, it shouldn't be there. Now we want to go back and say, okay, the product from January 1st, 2022 to 2024 had this price, but this was not in the database. Remember that, it wasn't there. So we're doing an insert. So we insert it, it's there now. So now if we query the data, as of 2024, let's see what it shows. We get it at 340. So it's not showing the $300 because that's valid to January 1st, only January 1st. This is January 2nd. So it has that $340, the first insert we did. Now, if we go before that, you see that $300 product that we just inserted between these two dates. And if we go even before 2020, remember, it's only valid from 2022 to 2024. We should not be able to see anything. So, you can record the feature, right? Inserting records in the past, basically. And again, once you do that, you're able to see again the history of the data and then blah, 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 blah. So that's kind of like what I wanted to show. It has a lot more features. I just didn't have time to go through all of them, and also learning, right? As I mentioned, this was new to me. I hadn't used this before. So go ahead, Ben.
Yes. So I guess I wanted to make a few comments or maybe questions.
Yeah.
Have you used XTQL at all for querying the data?
XTQL. So no, I did not use XTQL. I just used
Oh, so you just use the driver directly?
Yeah, directly. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. But that's another way to use it as well. It looks pretty neat, as for sure. But yeah, I use just the closure driver. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I guess the comment that I wanted to make is that whether you look at the XTQL quote unquote syntax or the closure driver like syntax, if you compare it to for example the Java equivalent or the Python equivalent, I don't know if you can open it.
Yeah, I can do that. What are the drivers? Where are your drivers? Oh, yeah, here. So let's go to Java.
Yeah. So one thing you might notice right away is that for the closure equivalent, there was no need for this much ceremony, right?
Yep.
There was no need to define classes. There was no need to, annotate the methods like public, static, void, blah, blah, blah. There was no need to do that. Also, the syntax itself looked consistent, so how can I say it? For example, for printing something, there's no need to format, the string in order to print it. Because the stuff the way you represent the data in Clojure, it's a format called Eden, like EDN. And basically what you write in code looks exactly, is exactly what's printed directly. There's no need for extra formatting, so technically when Aziz was running the queries, the results that were printing like in the console, those were at the same time valid Clojure syntax. You could copy them and put them back in the code and it's still valid, So basically there's this consistency of what the data looks like. And even when it's printed, it's still consistent, And it doesn't matter if you're doing queries or anything else. It's always the verb and then the arguments, or the data directly, right?
Yeah.
So
that's why
some remarks for some of the advantages of using Clojure. There's a lot of boilerplate code you don't have to deal with. So
that's even why I avoided the Python one.
Yeah, open the Python one. Let's see.
Doing the Python one is also kind of like a lot too.
Kind of scary. Like, what is this cursor thing? We haven't seen that in the Clojure one.
So yeah.
I think with await, blah blah blah. Like, there's no need to do all that.
Yeah, I definitely highly recommend if you want to go. Just go. It's like I said, it's gonna be a little bit painful because you're learning two things at the same time, like the Clojure and also XCDB. But it'll click after a while. Like once you figure out, you'll be like, oh, okay, Then you won't even want to go touch the the other drivers. For Afis, this is kind of the Kotlin one. Obviously you have to provide a dependency and connect. Yeah, it's a little shorter, I guess.
Yeah. Also, like this way of writing Clojure in the case of XTDB, right? It's not limited to just doing database stuff with Clojure. That syntax that you saw, you write the exact same thing, whether you are producing HTML or making HTTP requests or passing Excel documents. It just doesn't matter. The data always looks the same. It's not special to one particular area.
All right. Any other comments, questions? Yeah. So my only recommendation, if you want to get started with this, maybe try the Visual Studio Code route, get a handle, and then you can go back to maybe like using the way that they talk about the Docker version. Sorry, I'm going back and forth here. Using the what is the quick start? This one with the Docker version, and then we'll go from there. I think this one helps, but I don't think you learn as much using the website directly. I mean, you learn the concept, but I feel like it's nice to actually do it the other way. Yeah.
So, oh no. It's compatible with Postgres, so that means you can generate the tables and everything directly from your code, right?
It should be like, you mean like DMLs?
Mm-hmm.
Right here. So
Nice.
what is the transaction DML? Yeah, so you have the table. I'm trying to find like a create table kind of example. Maybe actually that actually creates a table if it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, it's schemaless, right?
Yeah.
So you just need the table name and just insert your data.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you have your operations here. Maybe standard library. Query. Yeah. Yep. Any other questions? Any comments? That's it for the talk, I guess. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
So maybe I have a question for the audience. Would you like to see like some more content like this, or maybe explore some I don't know, exotic programming languages like Clojure and maybe some other stuff?
I just want to make money. So anything that can help me make money, that's good.
Sure.
Yeah. No, so for me, I know one of the challenges in IoT is like the historical data, and you end up very quickly with a large set of data and stuff. So I can see how I can use this one.
Mhm.
You have to try it, but it's a pretty good option. So I would like you guys to kind of, if you can present new technologies like that, it helps us kind of improve our projects.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep, definitely. Yep, we'll do.
I do have a request for the next presentation. Dagger. Can somebody actually, do something on Dagger that will actually help anybody like move faster?
Dagger?
Dagger for Android or the other Dagger?
The other Dagger, the darker Dagger.
Okay. Have you started using it?
Well, I started researching on it and then planning to use it soon, but I'm just looking to see if there is a way to actually just speed up the process. Technically, I'm cheat. I'm looking for a cheat code.
Sure. I mean, for quite a few presentations, I was about to show it, but then ran out of time. So I had to cut that part out several times. I do use Dagger. I've been using it for more than 2 years now.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I can take this and present something on Dagger.
great. Thank you.
Is there anything in particular you are looking for Dagger? Or just
Yep.
the regular like DevOps stuff, deploying?
Just the automation part, the DevOps, and also linter and all that stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. This Dagger, right? This one, right?
That one, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Well, thank you all for your time. Appreciate it. Hope you got something out of this talk today.
Yeah, thank you. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks to you.
Yeah, absolutely. You have yourself a good Saturday. Yeah, we'll see you in 2 weeks. I guess it's probably going to be about Dagger.
Dagger. Yep.
Thank you for sharing the knowledge.
No problem.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
Thank you for attending.
Bye.
Well done. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Bye.
Yep. Okay.